Good day to the citizens of this planet. We are anonymous. The Dakota Access Pipeline, a $3.8 billion, four-state project designed to carry oil from North Dakota to Illinois, has become a rallying point for American Indian tribes and others determined to block it. Here's a look at the key players connected with the protest, which began in April, heated up during the summer and boiled over this month with some 400 arrests. The pipeline company, Energy Transfer Partners, or ETP, is a Fortune 500 oil and natural gas company based in Dallas. It is the main owner of the pipeline, along with Sunoco Logistics Partners and Phillips 66. Launched in 1995, the company now has about 71,000 miles of natural gas and crude oil pipeline. The Dakota Access project would add 1,200 more miles, and ETP has long had a goal of finishing it by the end of 2016. The company warned in court documents that a delay in construction would cost it $1.4 billion in lost revenue in the first year. In August, the company announced it had sold nearly 37% of the project to Enbridge Energy Partners, the company that developed the Keystone XL pipeline, and Marathon Petroleum Corporation in a deal worth $2 billion. The tribal chairman, Dave Archambault II, leads the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, whose reservation on the North Dakota-South Dakota border sits close to the pipeline's path. The laconic 45-year-old, whose tribe helped build a lawsuit against ETP and the federal government, has himself been sued by ETP for interfering with the pipeline and been arrested. Archambault has spoken for years about concerns among the leaders of North Dakota's 5 American Indian reservations about increasing environmental incidents in the state's western oil patch. He traveled to Switzerland to plead the tribe's case to the United Nations and urged President Barack Obama to step in. After a federal judge declined to grant the Standing Rock tribe an injunction against the pipeline, 3 federal agencies ordered a halt to construction on Army Corps of Engineers-owned land while the permitting process was reviewed. The protesters, members of more than 200 tribes from across North America, have come to the tribe's encampment at the confluence of the Missouri and Cannonball rivers since August, the tribe says. Crowd estimates at the protest site have varied from a few hundred to several thousand depending on the day, enough for tribal officials to call it one of the largest gatherings of Native Americans in a century or more. They say the pipeline threatens water sources and will disturb sacred sites and artifacts, and there is a broader concern about tribal sovereignty and rights. Many of the protesters are demonstrating peacefully and urging others to do the same. Others have been more militant. More than 140 people were arrested recently when law enforcement moved in to evict an encampment that had been set up on pipeline property. The sheriff, the main face of law enforcement, has been Morton County Sheriff Kyle Kirchmeier, who previously was a captain with the State Highway Patrol, a part-time police officer, a corrections officer and a soldier. His department has been accused by protesters of being sympathetic to the pipeline's workers and private security. Though deputies were not at a violent September 3rd clash between protesters and private security guards on private land, Kirchmeier said in a news release that the guards were ambushed and assaulted by protesters. The tribe says the protesters were being provoked. Kirchmeier has frequently cited the burden of the long-lasting protest on his small department. Morton County has had help from state troopers and National Guard members and, more recently, from sheriff's departments traveling in from several states to help out. They say the pipeline threatens water sources and will disturb sacred sites and artifacts, and there is a broader concern about tribal sovereignty and rights. Many of the protesters are demonstrating peacefully and urging others to do the same. Others have been more militant. More than 140 people were arrested recently when law enforcement moved in to evict an encampment that had been set up on pipeline property. The governor. When the Dakota Access Pipeline was announced, North Dakota Governor Jack Dalrymple had just urged industry and government officials to build more pipelines to keep pace with the state's oil production, which is second only to Texas. Aside from appearing at some briefings, Dalrymple has been mostly out of public view during the long process. The governor did send 100 National Guard members to help law enforcement. The federal judge. The Standing Rock's Ooze lawsuit against the pipeline revolves around challenging the Army Corps process for permitting water crossings. In September, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg in Washington declined the tribe's request for an injunction as it pursues an appeal. Boasberg, an Obama appointee in 2010, said the Corps documented dozens of its attempts to engage with Standing Rock officials to identify historical resources at Lake Oahe and other places covered by the permit, despite the tribe's claims to the contrary. He said the tribe did not show it will suffer any harm that the court has the authority to prevent. The tribe's appeal is pending with the U.S. Court of Appeals. We at Anonymous stand with Standing Rock. For all employees of the pipelines, remember we are your neighbors. Did you ever have this feeling that you are being watched? Well, Anonymous is the security guard for humanity. We have loads of data to release if you listings stop your employment with these enemies of the plant.
Anonymous.
In the U.S. state of North Dakota, at least 117 protesters have been arrested as soldiers and heavily armed police dispersed a demonstration against the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Get off the pickup and move to the south.
I felt safe. This is not okay.
Have to have you guys go south and we will put that fire out.
Protesters say building the pipeline will threaten the environment and destroy sites sacred to the Native American Indians. RT's Alexei Reshevsky has details.
The first peaceful protest, the protest camp as the natives called it, started in April this year. I went there a month before in March. I saw very many surprised eyes from the Native Americans there telling us that we were the only ones reporting on the story in the whole country. And when in August the first arrests and the first confrontations between the protesters and the police started, only then the mainstream media started picking up on the story. In fact, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, the core of the protest, they got a lot of attention and a lot of support, including members of the Congress, including Hollywood actors like Mark Ruffalo or Susan Sarandon, including even the UN Human Rights panel in Geneva, where the chief of the tribe spoke earlier a couple of months ago. But that didn't really seem to help, because earlier this month they lost an injunction at the U.S. Courts of Appeal to have this pipeline stopped. And ever since then, the construction of the pipeline has resumed. And ever since then, the confrontations between the protesters and the police have intensified.
Helicopters and military-style trucks were sent to the area to disperse the protesters. Police also used pepper spray and beanbag rounds, a form of what was known as a non-lethal ammunition. Now, the Morton County Sheriff's Department released a statement claiming that protesters escalated the standoff by setting up illegal roadblocks and encampments. However, critics say the police went too far.
They send in police officers that have military-grade weapons. You know, these are weapons that were used in the imperialist wars that are being fought by the United States. When they're done with these weapons, they bring them back to the United States and they start to dole them out to different police departments. And these police departments use them in a very heavy-handed manner to put down and to suppress any kind of protest whatsoever. These people were protesting peacefully, rightfully so protesting, and it is completely inappropriate, it is completely uncivilized, and dare I say barbaric, to come in with these kind of weapons, these kind of militarized weapons against peaceful protesters.
These people have been oppressing us for over 500 years. I'm tired of this shit, to be honest. You know, I'm here to make a change. And if we have to do it this way, then we're gonna have to do it this way.
Humvees with snipers in the turrets up there as well.
He will only listen to us and understand our struggles for the water and for the benefit of everybody. We wouldn't be in this spot. That's all we're here, is to protect the water and the sacred integrity of this land and our relationship to each other.
These lines of police officers, they're there because the water protectors moved on when they saw construction happening right down there. You can see the excavators, they're bringing in railroad ties. Now they're holding a multi-round grenade launcher. But now they have left rounds aimed at people. There are big OC canisters as well. You can see the police officers have now made a kind of corridor all the way around it and are slowly trying to push everyone out of this camp.
We're here to protect the sacred water and sacred Mother Earth, and I just don't want to have to tell my kids when they ask me what does clean water taste like.
Part of the International Indigenous Youth Council. I stand in solidarity with you, me and my people.
Stay away from the officers. Do not get out of the pickup. Stay at the pickup. On the roadway. Move south.
Move back, you guys. Move back.
Hey! Hold on your arms.
Do not throw objects from the crowd. Move to the south. Move to the south.
Pepper sprays being unleashed. More pepper sprays. Tons of pepper spray in the air now. The wind is sort of on. Let's get back. Yeah, they're engaging tons of pepper spray. This took down somebody. They're stepping on him. So right now, people with medicine staffs are trying to hold their line. They're holding it in prayer.
Stop throwing! Stop throwing shit!
Move to the south.
Security has some kind of gas. People are being pepper sprayed.
We are not leaving!
reporter from New York. What are you spraying people with?
I haven't sprayed anything, man.
But what is that?
The guy just makes me in the face right now. Amy Goodman, this guy makes me in the face.
Can you show us the label?
Look, it's all over my sunglasses. Just makes me in the face.
A dog.
Dog bit him right now.
Throw the dog on me. These fuckers throw the dog on me. Look at this. Look at this.
Let me say.
You throw the dog on me. No, you did it on purpose, man.
Let me say.
Over there with that dog. I was like walking, throw the dog on me straight, even without any warning, you know. Look at this. Look at this.
The dog.
Yeah, the dog did it, you know. Look at this. It's there. So clear.
Man, your dog just bit this protester. Your dog just bit that protester. Are you telling the dogs to bite the protesters? The dog has blood in its nose and its mouth.
And she's still standing here threatening. You can't put your phone on the dog. You're an evil woman.
Against us, and we're not doing anything.
Why are you letting her dog go after the protesters? It's covered in blood. Stop the woman! You sick the fucking woman! What the fuck is wrong with you? Get your fucking dogs out of here! Get your fucking dogs out of here! Get the fucking dogs out of here!
Meanwhile, 2 American documentary makers are facing decades in prison for recording pipeline protests across the country. They filmed activists attempting to shut down pipelines in 5 different states this month. Most of the videos were confiscated by police, and many of the activists arrested alongside the journalists. And filmmaker Daya Schlossberry now faces up to 45 years in prison for recording the oil pipeline protests. We spoke to Daya and her colleague Josh Fox. They believe they shouldn't be punished for simply doing their job.
I was doing my job. I was documenting a climate action. I was aware of the hugely unprecedented nature of this action and knew that it wasn't likely to be covered in mainstream media, and I wanted to bring attention to the issues that it was targeting, so I was filming it. I was filming it in order to report that to the public. I was there. I was documenting, and they didn't know what my involvement was. I told them I was a filmmaker and that I was filming from public property, and they still put me in jail.
This is part of a pattern, Ed, in the media. You saw Amy Goodman get arrested for reporting. You saw Shailene Woodley get arrested for live streaming. It's clear that this state is trying to repress journalism because, it's doing something that is essentially immoral and we believe should be illegal. It is against the First Amendment to arrest reporters who are simply trying to bring the public a story that they need to hear because the mainstream media is not covering it. And I don't think the mainstream media would be talking about fracking or Standing Rock or any of these issues if it wasn't for documentarians like the amazing Daya Schlossberg next to me and a lot of other citizen journalists who are bringing these issues to the fore.